You just living life thinking that, oh, I'm just gonna go in this meeting and I'm just gonna wing it and see how it comes out. And when you're not successful, you start blaming everybody else. Come on, man. You know
like, stop putting on a facade and this facade of somebody that you're not.
Stop trying to look good and actually
put in the groundwork.
Yeah. Finally getting a black teacher that looks like you, that represents you, that's smart. You know, it's just amazing. What's good, everybody? My name is Robert Peters, the host of the Sharper and Sharper podcast. Today I have three amazing guests that will be joining me on a conversation about race and the injustices that has existed in the black community for so long. First, I have the amazing Alanie Abron, who is studying at San Diego State University. And I have Michael Brent, who is a high school student. And I have Paula, who is a recent high school graduate in Germany. First, I want you guys to check out this video with Ahmaud Arbery's mom talking about how she believes her son's death was a hate crime, and how also Georgia does not have a hate crime law as of yet.
From your baby boy, I love you, mama. I know sometimes we don't see eye to eye, but that still don't change the love I have for you. On February 23rd, my son, Ahmaud Arbery, went out for a jog. Ahmaud would go jogging every day. I said, do you think that staying fit is gonna make you look as young as me? And he would just laugh. He stopped at a construction site to take a break and to look around for a few minutes. But when he left, he was followed by 3 white men who chased him down and killed him in the street. He was unarmed, but he was black.
Before police arrival, while Mr. Arbery was on the ground, that he heard Travis and Michael make the statement, "Fucking nigger."
To me, this was clearly a hate crime, but Georgia is one of 4 states in the country without a hate crime law. If Georgia had a hate crime law, Ahmaud's killers could face additional sentencing for murdering my son because of the color of his skin. As we've seen in the protests about George Floyd, Ahmaud is just one of the many black lives that has been lost due to hatred. Georgia lawmakers passed a hate crime bill. Ahmaud was the baby, and when Ahmaud knew that I was angry and I was upset with him, he would look at me with this really funny eye. And he would do that just to make me laugh, just to make me smile. He was not only my baby, he was actually my friend. Yes, Ahmaud's murderers were arrested, and hopefully they'll be thrown behind bars. So why do we even need a hate crime law? Because it would show that targeting someone because of their race is unacceptable. My son's murder was not the only crime committed in Georgia that was motivated by prejudice. Ronald Trey Peters was murdered because he was gay.
Witnesses say his attacker used an anti-gay slur before shooting Peters multiple times.
White supremacists spray painted swastikas on a high school in Roswell.
But parents say the bigger question is, why is there no hate crime statute here in Georgia?
In November, a 16-year-old white girl planned a knife attack on a black church.
The white suspect had researched black churches online and written down how she planned to carry out the attack.
And it's not just recent history.
Georgia Legislative Council has called on the FBI to investigate the reorganized plan.
I know that prejudice and racism did exist in the place that I chose home. I had to explain to Ahmaud that he would be sometimes disliked because of the color of his skin. But when he left our home for a jog, I never thought that I needed to be worried. Ahmaud wasn't killed because he was doing a crime. So why would he have been targeted if it wasn't just for hate? Last year, Georgia State House moved in the right direction, passing House Bill 426, which would impose harsher sentencing for hate crimes. But the bill has been stalled for a year, and state Senate leadership refuses to vote on it. Chairman Jesse Stone and Lieutenant Governor Duncan, please do the right thing. State senators are going back into session. Lawmakers on both sides of the aisle support this. Pass a hate crime law. And to have this law passed in the memory of Ahmaud wouldn't bring him back, but it would mean so much to me that him leaving me did change something.
For one, I think that a lot of the change happening now is long overdue. The video that we just saw about Georgia not having a hate crime law is beyond me because it's just sad that like not Black men or Black women, but Black bodies are still identified as terrorists almost in our own country. And you can see it on the micro level when thinking about what it's like to be a Black student at state, or what's it like being a recent high school graduate who went to the CVS. I have brothers, so they told me how they would go to the CVS pharmacy after school and they would be followed by police because of what they look like. And now that it's 2020 and a lot of people are like, well, racism doesn't exist because we're so progressive now with, and I think, like you mentioned, like a lot of laws are moving in the right direction, but they need to move faster, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Anybody else want to go speak on that?
Yeah. So, I think one of the weirdest things about these laws anyway is the fact that they are needed. It kind of feels like, when you do have things like hate crime laws and things of that sort, the fact that those things are needed and they're not happening as fast and as energetic as pushing money and pushing agendas to things that don't help anyone and actually affect us negatively, all of us in this country. You see, there is a massive issue. One of the largest things that I think I can really speak on now is I just saw a video where Malcolm X was talking, and one of the most insane things is just, what he pretty much speaking on behalf of, Black people, and to say that, if we were truly citizens of this country, we wouldn't need these things to protect us. We'd already be protected as citizens. I think that's the biggest thing for me right now and how I look at things.
Exactly. Like, think about there's an anti-lynching bill they've been trying to pass it for decades. It still hasn't been passed. And actually, in this more current bill that was sparked by all the protests across the country, this policing reform bill, they're trying to get that anti-lynching bill to be classified as a hate crime, and they can't even do that. But Paula, you can go.
I feel like it's crazy that the U.S., like, it must be, like, I feel like it's a slap in the face for the Black community to, when a Black man like Ahmaud Arbery is shot and it is not seen as a hate crime, or Georgia doesn't even have this legal option or this law option. This obviously shows how so many people still don't acknowledge the fact that racism exists and that people are killed because of their skin color. And, this is just so naive, and like people are saying, it's not a thing, but it is. And
Yeah, and let's talk about the trial and just everything leading up to right now. When it comes to Ahmaud Arbery, it took police officers 2 months to arrest him, the people who killed Ahmaud Arbery, right? And that was after there was a lot of noise made over social media, because if that video never came out, we would have never known what happened. There was a lot of prosecutors and DAs and people that were trying to cover this up. And I mean, and it just shows you, the systematic racism, and it shows you the oppression, so that's where I kind of disconnect, and I don't understand why it still takes in 2020 all this. Why are we still having to jump through hoops just to get what feels like a little piece of justice? Because there's so many Black men and women that have died, and there has been no justice. So that's why people are angry and frustrated, but yet the only images that we can see from the protests are people that are looting, quote unquote.
Yeah. I think it's a shame that the citizens and other people have to speak up, and it needs like a movement or social media to get this big and make this specific case so well known, to get people to do their jobs, and that the system and the justice system in the US is just can't do their jobs alone, and is structurally racist.
And to go off of what Paula said, I think also the system didn't necessarily have to take accountability for so long, because there wasn't a lot of attention brought to politics, right? It's now, right now, it's young people that are leading all these political movements. Not to say that older people aren't connected as much, but I think because social media is starting to take a play in politics and almost exposing how corrupt the legislative system, the judicial system, especially our presidential system, with Trump being on Twitter day in, day out saying out of pocket stuff. I think that's why it's moving in the right direction, if that makes sense. But yeah, I think it also comes into our education system as well. Like I don't recall ever learning in high school about recent or current politics and what's happening. I was in high school and when I think Obama was in presidency, and then Trump took over in 2016. But even then, that was kind of obscure to us because we were we're too young to vote. We don't know anything about it. And it wasn't until later, just recently, I'm starting to see a lot of high schoolers getting more involved outside of their classrooms, outside of their campus organizations, to educate other people, especially their peers, on how much power we have as individuals so that we can create the change that we want to see. Because the fact of it now is there isn't change because there wasn't necessarily a need for change. The people weren't demanding it.
Right. Yeah, and my question would be for all of you guys, what do we need now? I know you brought up education, Alanie, and I've always been an advocate for teaching Latino history, Black history, Japanese history, because to be quite frank, all of history comes from a Eurocentric perspective. What do we need to change the culture of this country, that represents all of us? Because by the year 2043, there was a study that just came out. By the year 2043, America will be a majority minority country. And the term they use is the browning of America. So there's going to be more Latinos, more Black people, more Japanese people, more Native Americans. So, and I think that's part of the fear. I know, Michael, I talked to you about that a little while ago. That's part of the fear that some white Americans are having. It's like Barack Obama actually became president in 2008. This is not the America that we envisioned. We brought slaves in 1619 based off of economic factors to build our country. We stole this land from the Native Americans. So, you know, if someone could speak to that.
I, for one, I think I watched I've been watching a lot of videos lately just to educate myself a little bit more about Black history. Um, and it's crazy how a lot of the, how do you say, a lot of the notions that our history in high school, like you said, Eurocentric history has taught us, is that like Abraham Lincoln is our savior because he basically abolished slavery. And they don't go into the gruesome details of what slavery actually did to Africans and later on African Americans that were pretty much cattle. And even then, after slavery was abolished, Black men and women, I don't know, only Black men were seen as 3/4 of a person. Black women weren't even accounted for in a sense of being called a so-called citizen. And then moving closer to now, this idea of the white savior, it just doesn't add up. And so for me, it's become a very eye-opening taking Afros classes or Africana studies classes, because history, knowing our past as accurately as possible makes it easier to create the present. And if we're gonna hold on to this idea that, you know, Black people have always been, I don't want to say oppressed, but like always having to depend on the white man to save us, whether that's through slavery, whether that's through civil rights, even now with capitalism and the fact that white men probably dominate that. I just saw a news article about how like the government and the media have been so closely intertwined, and that's a way of like capturing the audience and almost like brainwashing us. And so and seeing how that all plays into it, I think if we were to correct history, correct the past, we can accurately save our future. I know that sounds a little poetic, but does that make sense? I know, I'm like, yeah.
I definitely do the same. Go ahead, Paula.
I think the most important step towards the future, I think, is to really leave the past behind us. And with that, I don't mean forgetting, definitely not, but learning from it, but not dragging everything like racism with us, because it's not like, there's no reason for a society or for the US to base everything on their past, and it can't be the reality any longer that the way people of color are being treated is because of how they were, like how it you know, how it connects to the past and how slavery played a big role in that. And we have to move on from the past and just focus on the future and just, you know, question ourselves.
Does that mean we should forget about slavery, or what exactly do
no,
you say?
That's exactly what I was saying. We cannot forget about it. We have to learn from the past, but we have to move on from this thinking, you know, I mean the white men mostly, and you know, question why we think of certain people in a certain way, and if that is even, you know, rightfully so, which is not. And yeah.
Check this out. For some reason, Breonna Taylor's killers still have not been arrested. Listen to my panel's response to my question, what should be our next steps to get justice?
So from what I think is definitely, I think the protests are a strong message, but I think what they're really not seeing or again, with a lot of politicians, they're just a little too comfortable. They feel like they're going to continue to win. They're going to, I mean, then they will. You have a lot of senators, a lot of congressmen and women that have been in office
There's a
for
lot of
decades.
suppression,
Exactly.
gerrymandering. So that's part of the issue, Michael, that we got to address.
Oh,
You know?
for sure we do. And I think when it comes down to passing legislation and getting those things and still protesting, I mean, they're under a lot of pressure right now. Everyone's under a lot of pressure right now because they see they're not playing around. That's why you're seeing people now, now take down the Confederate statues. Oh, okay, well, how come this is so late? You knew they were wrong to begin with. Oh, now you want to go and donate money to these causes because they know it's an issue. They've known it's an issue. So now I think the pressure is on, and as long as we keep going with this pressure, the movement's so strong right now that if we have any candidate or anyone of that sort from any small or local government, besides just federal, I think that's the biggest step that we should be taking, a small government. Then we go big, and then we just take over because that's the right way that it should be. It should be people that are willing to go out and protest. It should be people that are willing to go out and speak up for those that maybe doesn't affect them totally, but it does affect them in a way. That's how you have to differentiate who's going to be actually supporting everyone in this country rather than just a few. That's the biggest way that we're going to make change. Because right now it seems as though we've been having a few people that are able to do that, but I don't think the few is going to outnumber the many that are not on that same level. And we got to get that many out of there as fast as we can, because our country is truly failing at doing its first duty, and that's standing up for the people. What people? It didn't seem like it's all people. It seems like it's only a few, which is a problem.
Yeah.
So there should definitely not be qualified immunity, and police officers should obviously be charged because the state should just not allow this racist behavior and behavior like this in general. And there should definitely be, I don't know, maybe like another institution that checks on certain things and doesn't let officers slip through. And you know, like in Berlin recently, an anti-discrimination law was passed, which makes authorities where you can complain about certain authorities. And this is, I think, the first and most important step to do, and actually address the cause and not just ignore it and pretend like nothing is happening, because it is. And yeah, because what the state is basically telling us or saying is that they don't care and it's not an issue, and they won't, you know, serve justice, and they won't change it.
Yeah. No, definitely. I think for one, too, we should focus on like police unions. I think that the police, like you said earlier, like the qualified immunity, the police are given a duty to protect the people. I seen like a TikTok about how a policeman, he basically was saying how hard it is for him to, a Black policeman, how hard it is to do his job, because on one hand, it's I have a duty to protect citizens. And then on another hand, you have supervisors and higher ups telling him to use violent violent solutions in order to control the protest.
Exactly.
And it's things like that where it's like they give the police too much power to where they're not even able to function and do their job.
Yeah, the police has definitely in the US been growing when it comes to their problems they have to solve, and their the aspects they are like, the police in the US is seen as like the universal problem solver, and this is something that has to change, because first of all, it can't be, if this is going to be the case, then you have to have more education, they have to learn more about certain things, they have to maybe have political you know, aspects as well in their education, and many other things. But the thing is that we can't, or like the US can't expect the police or police officers to take care of everything and be able to take every situation. And we need more social workers. We can't let the police handle mentally ill people because they don't know how to
they don't know how to deal with it.
approach
You're not
them.
equipped.
And
Yeah.
like the state, that's just really naive to think that the police can solve everything and just be there for everybody's safety, because that's not how it works. And if it was to work, then there would have to be like so much, like the structure would have to be changed completely. And the US has, like, when looking at the history, just has a long line of solving problems or with violence, and this in the future should not be the case anymore. We can't approach every problem with violence. We have to look at the roots. We have to look at where they come from and approach them before they're happening, and not just blame certain people for their behavior. And just because no person is born and is just bad or just kills people, or and we have to start at the root and give every person the equal opportunity to thrive and grow in a society.
Yeah, and to your point, Paula, like you said, police officers should not be dealing with mental health crisis. They shouldn't be dealing with wellness checks. There was a video that went viral a couple years ago. It was a black veteran. He was naked. He was running around in some park, but he was mentally ill. See, and I think that's part of the problem too. We categorize Black people who are going through mental health crisis as violent, as vulgar, and these just, unattainable people. But then when you have a white person who goes into a school and shoots up that school, they're mentally ill. Let me go take them to a burger joint, get them a burger before we hit the precinct. And that's the type of systematic racism that is so prevalent in our society. And I don't think it's just in the United States. I think it's all over the world, to be quite frank with you. And that has to be addressed. So.
And I think even a scarier thing is, like, even when it comes down to it not being anything about the systemic part of it, the social aspect and how people are viewed is another scary thing, because alongside you just have people that, when it comes down to the police, why people do call the police on African Americans on a higher level, which is unfortunate. I mean, the same incident that we saw at Central Park where a lady called the police and used the fact that she was calling the police on an African American man is somehow get the police to actually come faster or anything of that sort. I mean, I feel like that's got to be one of the prime examples of how, Black people are seen in our country. I mean, first off, the fact that she called the police on him and said, I'm going to tell the police that there's an African American man attacking me, and then actually doing that is somewhat, in a sense, disheartening, especially because the guy, he was bird watching, and the fact that he just told her, hey, can you put your dog on a leash? It's park rules. I mean, it's like the audacity, just the complete audacity to feel like this is the route that you need to take, screaming on the phone as if somehow your entire life mistakes. It almost feels like if the excuse that you use or the methods that you use is to call the police for Black people telling you what you should and shouldn't be doing when it's the rule, or whether you feel like someone shouldn't be in your neighborhood, or whether you feel that, I feel like a lot of Black people probably feel like a lot of people shouldn't be in their neighborhood due to gentrification. You don't see us calling the police on everybody, but the fact that those things happen and those are the methods that people take, it shows that, the systemic part is there, the social and the societal part, it needs to be addressed too. People need to get out of their feelings on these issues. People need to step up and take different precautions, because obviously we're seeing an issue that the underlining is for sure within a lot of the laws that we have. But when it comes down to people with that mindset running for things, when it comes down to that mindset being our doctors and seeing a higher wave of Black women having miscarriages, when you see all these things going on, the societal part, the mindset, it needs to be attacked too. And we need to do that by, of course, education. I think that's the biggest push for us, for sure.
I gotta say, Michael made a really great point about this being also a societal issue. But I think another point that needs to be made is that there are images in the media that portray Black people in a negative light. For instance, when the protests all across the world, especially in the United States, first happened, there were these images that were portraying Black people as looters, thugs, and criminals. For some reason, the media felt it necessary to shed a light on the Black people that were quote unquote looting. Yet there were white people that were looting, but it didn't get the same amount of coverage. They didn't show you the Black people who were giving out food and water at the protest, but they show you the looting. And just think about if that was your only image or interaction with Black people. You don't go to school with Black people, you don't live in communities with Black people, but if those are the images that you're seeing, also with reality TV or just listening to quote unquote, maybe, I don't know, Black music, if those are the only images that you are seeing, you might too may think Black people are criminals, thugs, and they're only good for entertainment. And I might urge you too, you might want to check yourself. But before I start rambling too much, check out this question that Alanie asked me about history, educating people about history.
On that note, do you believe that it's, I guess, kind of the responsibility of Black people to educate their peers? Because that's been a big issue as well with this whole movement, is that
Hell no.
yeah, is that, you know, there's that.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Let me rephrase that, because that's going to be the thing. No, I don't.
I think you said it the right way, Rob.
Hell no,
Because-
then. So Michael,
yeah.
I don't think it's Black people's. It's our job to educate you on what your ancestors did to us for well over 200 years. The oppression, like I said, the land that we are on is stolen from the Native Americans, built by stolen people based off of economic factors to build up their economy. The White House that the racist president sits in was built by slaves. So
Right.
I don't really
Twice.
feel after right twice, because it got burned down, right?
Twice.
And I don't feel that it's our jobs as Black Americans to make sure you guys are educated, white Americans or any other non-Black person is educated. I believe it is our job to continually and collectively fight together as a unit and unite and push, Black history in schools. Black History Month, the only thing that they ever show you is Dr. Martin Luther King, Rosa Parks, as she's selling a bus, and that's about it. And you might get a play if you're like a super liberal school like Paula. You might get a Black play that's not even 2 hours. That's like an hour, and after that it just washes away with people, entertainment and music and all that other stuff. So it has to be societal, and it's a systematic thing as well, and it's also a mindset.
Definitely.
Yeah, and again, I think when it comes down to it, I mean, when you look at other people that have been put down, I mean, it's not any Asian American's job to tell me, to teach me anything, when I can easily go and look that up myself. I can find that out myself. Now, when they do give insight, of course you take it, you listen. Those are things you should be doing. But overall, the overreaching issue is also those that lack the care to even do those things, to look into themselves and don't even care to listen either way. It goes through one ear, goes out the other. And when those types of people are around, obviously the feeling is just different. So
Yeah.
it's overall a complete mess, because when it comes down to not even just Black people's issues in this country, when it comes down to Jewish people's issues, Muslim people's issues, and Asian Americans people's issues, Latino and Latinx people's issues, we're going to tend to see a lot of people that neglect their issues so that they can sleep better at night. And I feel like that's got to be the craziest thing, is that when you see people try to debate you on, you know, the things that are happening now, what they use to try to say, well, that's the reason. It's got to be, it's just neglect on their part. They just want to sleep better at night. That's how I feel.
Check out this trailer for the film Crime Plus Punishment, available on Hulu, that discusses how NYPD police officers are pressured to arrest more Black and brown people. Watch this.
The department says there are no quotas.
Well, I can tell you there are quotas in the NYPD.
Truly explosive allegations.
They're coming from police officers who are part of what's being called the NYPD 12, who filed a class action lawsuit in federal court.
This is not just another lawsuit. 12 cops willing to step up like this, because you're not going to get this again for 100 years.
Hold it for one quick second. Now, to record.
From the beginning, I saw how this job was. It was not about helping people, it's about numbers.
Who's targeted most? The minority community.
Boom. And all this got dismissed.
All this got dismissed.
Once you start getting arrested, it goes in your record. They taking away jobs that they could be future lawyers, future cops.
Supervisors that are using police officers as a revenue-producing agent for the city.
This system has to change.
We all put our jobs on the line. We put everything on the line.
This is something that was placed on my desk.
You're still a police officer. And there are people in our community that don't work with police officers, period.
This is David versus Goliath. Without public support, we're nothing.
How long do you think you're going to keep the powder keg half on?
I believe in struggle, and with struggle comes change.
Can the NYPD be what cops are supposed to be?
Well, I mean, definitely the representation of people of color in jails, or generally when it comes to crimes, is not a true representation and is a result of a racist system and police targeting certain groups, and is also a result of, you know, police being more present and used in neighborhoods where there are more people of color, and cannot be seen as a true representation and cannot be seen as an argument to say that Blacks, for example, are more aggressive or commit more crimes, and that the system behind it actually is the problem and depicts this picture, or like depicts this not true representation.
Yeah,
and I agree with Paula.
Go ahead, Michael.
Yeah, I agree with Paula, especially considering, you know, having someone go up and send you, you know, when I posted the George Floyd incident, for example, and, you know, I posted the video and someone sent me FBI statistics on Black crime. And they were like, this is my response. And I was like, wow, okay. Did you watch the video? And they were like, oh, I couldn't finish it. It was too disgusting. And I was like, the most disgusting thing is that you sent these as if this is the reasoning for how Black people should be treated all around. You know, I mean, personally, it almost feels like if this is your justification for Black people being attacked, you know, obviously it's either you're plain right, you know, just you have prejudice on your own right. You know, this is just how you feel. Unfortunately, these statistics pander to that notion, and the media isn't helping either with that. You know, when you see African Americans that maybe do commit a crime that they shouldn't, that is heinous and reprehensible, you know, you hear stronger word use, monster, thug. You know, you hear those things, but when it may be a white assailant that does it, you know, it's, oh, well, there's something must have been wrong, you know. When you hear those things, it's almost as if, you know, it's purposefully supposed to sound better, you know. You know, this is, you know, they had an issue, they're crazy, you know. and it's used in the courtrooms also. So it's not a surprise that there are quotas. In this country, anything that has quotas, there's always some kind of terrible inclination to it. And it's just unfortunate that we are even discussing the fact that the police could even do this, let alone any advisors that are supposed to be protect and serve. I don't see any protection indoor serving in this if you're not doing your job, pretty much. This is abusing your power. And then they wonder why people are upset. And it's because obviously you can't do your job the right way. What makes you think you deserve a badge or to wear that uniform that we all are taught we should respect? But obviously it has no respect for us and our lives. So I find that to be quite hypocritical on the police. And also what worries me even more is that how many other officers are aware besides those 12 that aren't standing up? And where are we going to go with that? And how come, even if they do feel the same way, how come they feel like they can't stand up too? And I feel like that's another thing that needs to be talked about.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
What I find highly problematic is that also white people love to point fingers at blacks, and it's always like, oh look, they did this, and the media plays a huge role in this, and how I mean, if people want to portray people as certain things, they will find a way, or they will find arguments, and then only show their side on the media. But what I think is important is that also when it comes to people people being criminal or doing things that are not, I don't know, for instance, selling drugs, and you're being black, then a lot of the times it's just like, oh well, or you're being killed, and it's like, well, he was a drug dealer. That is not what this should be about, and often, in the situation where the cop killed the person, he didn't even know this, and this is not a justification. This is a person's life, and that should not be an argument, first of all. And also, I feel like the focus should be somewhere else. It should be, where in society did something go wrong that some people, I'm using this example right now, to feel like, or to have, to be needing to sell drugs. And this is, because a lot of black people are disadvantaged because they are often segregated and live in communities. There's often not really, white and blacks living together. So it's still, the US is a great example for, I think, segregated neighborhoods, and how this just adds to people being seen in a certain way because you don't really know them, and just seeing the media. And I think we should look, as a society, look more at why people are doing things, because like I said, nobody is born and not because of their skin color they're a certain way. That is not, nobody can tell me that is not a fact. So I think we should look at why some people maybe are doing certain things, and how society forces them to do so, and how they sometimes don't have any other options, instead of just pointing fingers and being like, look, here's another example, because really it's not them most of the time. I don't know, that was a lot of specifics, but.
You want to piggyback off that, Michael?
I agree entirely. I think those are the types of stuff that, people don't want to talk about,
Yeah.
Especially when you see a lot of the, I don't want to make this into the political thing, conservative versus liberal, because not all conservatives feel this way. But
you gotta say.
Yeah, I think when it comes down to it, a lot of people, they'll say, oh, well, you love talking about, Black Lives Matter. Do Black Lives Matter when a black man kills another black man? And I say, yeah, it does. Did you care about any of that before you saw me post this? It's like, it's kind of like, why is that the conversation that some people want to go to, instead of the fact that a man was brutally murdered in front of the entire country, and nothing's been done yet. One of the officers just got out of on bail. This is insane. The fact that anyone could be trying to justify this, it just doesn't make any sense to me.
And to Paula's point, why do we always want to criminalize, not actually us, but why is it always being criminalized Black people when they get shot or killed? They're trying to criminalize George Floyd right now. I'm trying to tear apart his character.
Candace Owens is.
Yes, and I'm actually going to show that next. And I'm like, okay, if that's really what you believe is justifiable for him to die, then you are outright out of your mind. And similar to you, someone also sent me some stats and also sent me a DM when I made a post about everything going on with the protests and the death of George Floyd that just completely wrecked me. Was it
Ben Nambar?
I'll tell you after. I have to go look at it.
All right.
But he sent me something. Something about you're dividing people by putting this out, because I'm seen as a very unifying person. Whatever.
He's never vocal. They're never vocal about it on there. They like to go to you directly.
And I have a Republican that I email with quite often. I'm still trying to understand his logic behind this. You're thinking this whole thing about cleaning up the streets, and the streets have to be clean, kind of going back to what Rudy Giuliani did as mayor of New York City. This whole notion of stop and frisk and just locking up Black people, it's a cycle, man. And it's not just in New York, it happens all across the country. And I think
California is not exempt from that either.
Yeah, California's not exempt at all. Look at Jackie Lacey. She doesn't prosecute cops. She tries to, put out this big statement saying that she's doing all this for Americans and that she's done more. But where's the fact? She said, look at her record, but the record is a blank sheet of paper. I don't see nothing.
Yet seen the clips and did not pursue or wait for more clips to come out. First and foremost, George Floyd at the time of his arrest was high on fentanyl and he was high on methamphetamine. This came back in both of his autopsy reports. If you pursued the 911 transcript, you can see the person describing somebody who is out of their mind high, and which is what made the person fearful, because he tried to use a bill that I guess was a fake bill to purchase something, and then he was outside acting weird, and they, in their police call, said that this person was obviously distorted on drugs. When he is put into handcuffs and is put against the wall, a baggie of what looks to be like cocaine or it's white. It's a white baggie that he drops onto the floor that you can see in an image. If you look up the clip, the media is refusing to circulate it. You can find it on Twitter. If you use DuckDuckGo and look up George Floyd baggie, you can watch the clip yourself with your own eyes. He had drugs on him at the time of his arrest. Now, barring all of that, nobody thinks that he should have died during this arrest, but what I find despicable to be is that everyone is pretending that this man lived a heroic lifestyle when he didn't, and I want to talk about what his lifestyle was leading up to this moment, and why I refuse to accept the narrative that this person is a martyr or should be lifted up in the Black community, and that we should be buying t-shirts with his name on it, okay?
See,
all right, so yeah.
And here's the problem with Candace Owens. People like Candace Owens, go out of her way to tear down the character of Black people. She went out of her way to attack Andrew Gillum when he was in a slip-up in Miami, Florida. But yet, when we see white people that do the same crimes, as I mentioned before, Dylan Roof, who went to a Black church and killed all 9 of those people, why didn't she criminalize him and tear down his character? Why didn't she criminalize the people who went to the state house in Kentucky and brought semi-automatic weapons because they didn't want to do their social distancing, they wanted to get haircuts? So that's just the culture of Republicans to, have this whole thing of going after people's their record, but yet their president threatened his universities if they ever released his grades, because obviously he's not that smart.
All right, so I First of all, or mainly, I don't understand why, like, where this is taking us. Where is she or other people taking this problem, the discussion, by saying, by picking out these individuals and laying out their past, and because first of all, it doesn't justify their death, and second of all, the police officer, in this moment where he killed him, did not know about his past, as far as I know, or in many cases it is not. And then afterwards you can't say don't praise him, because it's not what it's about. It's about the police killing people because of their skin color. That's all that is in this discussion. And I don't understand why people make it about something else again, because that's not what it is about. And it's not about, why can't we just acknowledge the fact and just accept it and move forward and try to change that? Why do we have to argue on all these little things when this is not helping anybody?
All right, we're about to wrap this thing up. But do you believe Black people deserve reparations? What you're about to watch is a video from the House of Representatives on a hearing on reparations nearly a year ago. With everything going on in the world and just previous history, how the Black Americans have built up this country, built the White House twice, do you think they deserve reparations? And if you know me, you know I'm gonna say, yeah, it's about time. Check this out.
No, is that while emancipation deadbolted the door against the bandits of America, Jim Crow wedged the windows wide open. And that is the thing about Senator McConnell's something. It was 150 years ago, and it was right now.
Black people don't need another apology. We need safer neighborhoods and better schools. We need a less punitive criminal justice system. We need affordable health care. And none of these things can be achieved through reparations for slavery. For all these reasons, Bill H.R. 40 is a moral and political mistake. Thank you.
I feel a sense of anger where we are in the United States of America, where we have not had direct conversations about a lot of the root causes of the inequities and the pain and the hurt manifested in economic disparities, manifested in health disparities, manifested in a criminal justice system that is indeed a form of new Jim Crow. And so we as a nation have not yet truly acknowledged and grappled with racism and white supremacy that has tainted this country's founding and continues to persist in those deep racial disparities and inequalities.
I think one of the weirdest things is the conversation is, are they going to give it to us for slavery, for Jim Crow, or for current event? I think that's got to be the most, there's three separate things going on. If we're going to talk about current events, I mean, the trauma, all this stuff going on with segregation. I mean, I guess segregation is the biggest leap because it was all across this country, whether people like to admit it or not. It definitely was.
Yeah, it still is, especially in Chicago.
Yeah.
One of the most segregated cities.
When we talk about redlining, when we talk about, the fact that there was even a fight after the fact of slavery to have bills such as, Brown versus Board of Education or Brown versus housing and things of that sort. The steps taken for that to happen, to have what we have now, that still is not equitable, is the issue. And I think because we don't have that equitability, there needs to be some kind of form of, we don't care about the apology. Where are the steps taken to actually show forth what you've done to create a better way for those that you've put at a disproportionate rate? What they would try to give, no one knows. From what I know from a lot of other Black people that I've talked to about it, people don't want money. They want land. They want what they feel that we've built, what we've bled, died for, in the sake of this capitalist type of mentality that it's all about money. What about our lives? I think that's the weird thing. It's a conversation that for sure needs to happen. And people want to shy away from it like it doesn't matter, but it definitely does. Definitely something needs to get done about it. and this country is going to face it forever. And it needs to be a conversation that's talked about for a long time before something does happen. Because I feel like people want a formal reparation, but the scary thing is they know it'll be too much for this country. They'd have to give this country to Black people for everything that's going on. They would have to. There's no way.
Look at where Black people are today. How far we've made it after all the oppression and racism and the segregation and the still triumph. You know, imagine if we did have that financial freedom, if we did get those reparations, how unstoppable it would be.
Yeah, I mean, the historic inequalities are reasons for the current inequalities between white and Black Americans when it comes to many different aspects, such as healthcare, housing, and much more. And I think, yeah, reparations, in what form, you know, can be discussed, but should definitely be a thing that should be taken into consideration and serious consideration and should openly be discussed.
Absolutely. Thank you guys for joining me. That's all I've got for today. It was an amazing discussion. I appreciate you guys rocking with me. And that's what we do. Sharp and Sharper. This is Sharpest podcast on the planet.